Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what we're calling Food Loss and Waste Day here at the Food Systems Pavilion. My name is Lisa Moon, and I'm fortunate to work with the Global Food Banking Network. We are on session 4 of today and entitled Securing the Global Supply Chain, and we have an esteemed group of speakers to hear from. But before we get started, we have a short video.
Food Bank in Kenya comes in very handy in terms of providing food to the very vulnerable within our societies. We work closely with the small-scale farmers who, for some one reason or the others, they are also not able to sell their produce to the market because sometimes the harvest is so much and there is no market for their produce. So us as a food bank, we come in and buy whatever they have in surplus at very subsidized prices. So we secure from them so that they are at least able to get something for their next planting season. So we assist the farmers, the small-scale farmers in that way. For the large-scale farmers, yes, we get most donation. We also do, with the community, work together. The small-scale farmers, we partner with other organizations so that they are able to be given skills by like-minded organizations in order to increase the yield in their farms. So we have realized, and by the testimonies of some of these small-scale farmers, that their yield have increased because of the lesson that they have been receiving.
So welcome to the session that is going to focus on how supply chains from ports and economic zones to packing houses and markets and across distribution infrastructure that brings food into people's homes can be leveraged to solve a myriad of food system challenges, including the reduction of food loss and waste. To open the session, we are very honored to have with us Ms. Dina Esposito, the Assistant to the Administrator for the Bureau for Resilience, Environment, and Food Security at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Dina, please.
Can you hear me? Great, great. Happy Food Loss and Waste Day. I'm delighted to be here. As you've heard, I lead the Bureau for Resilience, Environment, and Food Security, and our new global food security strategy increasingly is focusing on food loss and waste, so we were delighted to come and make a few remarks before this very interesting panel on supply chains. We know that we're meeting at a pivotal moment in the world's food systems. We only have to look at events of the past year to know that climate change is undermining our ability to achieve food and water security, and that prolonged droughts, catastrophic storms, and floods are dramatically affecting food production. At the same time, we know that climate action in agriculture and food systems is needed if we're to reduce greenhouse gas and methane emissions and biodiversity loss. At USAID, we believe that the global food systems are fragile and stressed, but they are also ripe for transformation in ways that will both feed a growing population and contribute to ambitious climate action. The recent global food crisis generated much needed attention to the urgency of reforming our systems, and the lessons being drawn and the resulting actions being taken are playing out here at COP in many of the forums and platforms and pavilions that you're visiting. Finally, following supply shocks generated by COVID-19 and in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, USAID received an additional $1 billion from the U.S. Congress to shore up global food systems. And we were fortunate to have a long-standing global platform to turn to help us respond. Through our Feed the Future global hunger portfolio in some 40 countries around the world, we were able to work through long-standing public and private partners to mitigate some of the worst effects of global fertilizer shortfalls, speed improved inputs, information and finance to smallholder farmers, shore up agribusinesses who might otherwise have shuttered their businesses, and expanded social safety nets. Our Feed the Future efforts are dedicated to helping smallholder farmers, who account for more than 30% of food grown in the world, move from subsistence to commercial farming, and to helping the many small and medium enterprises they rely on through financing and technical assistance. One silver lining of this crisis has been the growing attention to an incentive to reduce food loss and waste. As the costs of inputs and the price of food go up, the incentive to protect every drop we do grow increases. We know that as much as 40% of the food grown never reaches the market, and that food loss and waste accounts for 8 to 10% of global emissions. While tragic, there is also tremendous opportunity evident in these startling statistics. Our updated global food security strategy elevates the food loss and waste agenda, and USAID missions, those are our country offices around the world, are engaging. Feed the Future takes a whole system approach to identifying and addressing the constraints all across the food system that affect the ability of food from getting to farm to fork. Our investments addressing food loss and waste are wide-ranging and based on the context where we are working. They include efforts to expand access to more weather and market information to help farmers improve on-farm decision-making, increasing investments in food safety, and supporting innovations and scaling of post-harvest drying and storage options, including cold storage. In response to the recent global shocks, we also launched a $10 million food loss and waste facility, which allows for matching grants to small and medium enterprises in Africa contributing to this agenda. The fund prioritizes investments in concepts that also advance women's empowerment and youth engagement and catalyzes stakeholder action for food loss and waste within the food system. In addition, the new fund will invest in analysis and technical support to help governments and the private sector to analyze their food systems and identify the best areas of investment to reduce food loss and waste in their commodity chains. A number of our missions are also moving beyond the focus on food loss to look at food waste. For example, in Tanzania, where up to 50% of crops are lost between the field and the market, the USAID mission recently launched a 5-year program to help farmers, traders, and processors cut food loss and waste in half while improving food safety. Their efforts involve collection of food waste in urban areas and transforming it into sustainable animal feed and organic fertilizer using black soldier fly larvae. Overall, food loss and waste efforts are bringing triple wins, bringing safer and more nutritious and affordable food into local markets and onto families' tables, creating partnerships with businesses and generating jobs for women and youth, and reducing harmful methane emissions that contribute to climate change. 2 years ago, President Biden committed the United States to invest $60 million over 5 years for research and development related to food loss and waste. In collaboration with the UAE, we are proud partners of the Aim for Climate initiative, which is a call to action that encourages more partnerships and deeper investment in climate-smart agricultural research and development. This past week, we were able to announce an additional $100 million to the CGIAR over the next 2 years, pending congressional approval of funds in support of climate-smart research and innovation, as well as $50 million to a new multi-donor funding platform to be led by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, that will invest in neglected crop research and soil health. I'd like to call out and thank the Global Food Banking Network for their participation in Aim for Climate with an innovation sprint they have just launched from food waste to food access that will help scale their global impact. We invite others of you here to also launch your own Aim for Climate Innovation Sprint to advance the strategic partnerships and the kinds of investments that are urgently needed to accelerate climate-smart changes to our agri-food systems and in ways that benefit women and young people and other marginalized groups. So contact us if you'd like to become an Aim for Climate Sprinter, and we'll look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We're very pleased now to welcome the moderator for the session to the stage. It is also Youth Day today, in addition to Food Loss and Waste Day here in the Food System Pavilion. And it is my pleasure to introduce Lana Weingenoth, and she is a youth climate justice activist and campaigns and policy manager at ProVeg International. So Lana, so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. I'm so honored to moderate the panel segment for the session today, not only on Food Loss and Waste Day, but as Lisa mentioned, also on Youth, Children, Education, and Skills Day for COP28. So really amazing to see this coming together, clearly interrelated topics. And we're really excited to also be getting into the interrelated topics in terms of food supply chains. And as we look at community resilience, private sector, and a lot of the other interrelated aspects of how we bring that forward with market access for growers and how we can have really solutions that work for everyone. So excited to have an amazing panel with us that we can call up to the stage. We'll have JJ from the Chief Sustainability Officer and VP of the EMEA Government Affairs of Brambles. Yes. We will also have Melindy from One Acre Fund, the Chief Agriculture Officer in our panel. And Helen from the Global Climate Policy of Trane Technologies. And Megan from Food Systems for the Future, their Impact Director. So you might already have a sense that we have a number of different voices here in this panel, and we're really excited to dig into oh, thank you. Yes, how that interrelates, and I think we'll start with the companies on the panel. So just to keep in mind, this will go for both JJ and Helen. And we can start with Helen. You represent companies working across the food value chain, and we would love to know what you see as leading opportunities to tackle the related issues of food loss and waste, community resilience, and the climate crisis. And you can also introduce yourself a little bit more in going into that. Yes, could you pass that down?
So my name is Helen Walter-Tirinoni, and I have the pleasure of working for Trane Technologies. When I started working for Trane Technologies, I realized quickly that I fell into a bucket of ice cream. This company, we manufacture, we are the largest manufacturer of heating and cooling equipment in the world, and our equipment moves over 60% of fresh and frozen food every day. So there's some opportunities, I think. One of the big things I think about, Matt, I don't know if he's here, but one of the things we've been chatting about is there an opportunity for the reverse supply chain, right? So new food goes to the grocery store. Is there a pickup for the food bank that comes back? So it's kind of that green mile, right? So we've been talking about trying to brainstorm ideas. I've only been there a whopping 9 months. I know that because I've changed my password 3 times. So. But Matt and I really started collaborating right away, trying to think of ways that we could work together. I love working where I work. We've got a group of engineers. The volunteerism embedded in our company is ridiculous. We have an overarching project called Mission Possible, where we come up with projects that are related to SDGs. And our engineers, we let our engineers loose. We pick a project, let our engineers loose, and they go and design new equipment or solutions to try to solve that problem. And it's really important that we don't do this in a vacuum, because then we're solving something that might not be the problem that we think it is. We hear the story about the water in the well, right? Don't solve that problem. Or the kid that needs shoes that you give a coat to, that's not the right solution. And so we're eager to have an iterative conversation, and knowing, Matt and the Global Food Bank Network, to kind of have that conversation with him, it'll help us to kind of get to the right places. One of the projects that we did under Mission Possible is our brilliant engineers designed cooling for food carts with no refrigerant. It's completely passive cooling, so there's no energy cost to it, for India. we did the design, but we just licensed the technology to the local company, and they built the equipment and made the money and sold 300 units, and I think we actually paid for those. But so it, that kind of a model where it increases the income for the family of that food cart owner, because they're not losing that food to waste. And it decreases methane emissions. It's kind of like a win-win, right? And it's food for people on the street. So it's a great win, and those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. We have deep-seated sustainability goals. We've got a net zero target for 2050, and we do all our reporting and math and all that jazz, which I think is important from a credibility perspective. And so, we are constantly looking for great ideas to try to help out. And another fun thing that happened after I met Matt was we started talking about, this reverse supply chain idea, or could we do this, or could we do that? And we said, okay, we've got deep connections in Brazil and Mexico. What if we go there? And I found out that we're already working with the food banks. So it was like, oh, gee. But that doesn't mean we can't expand this to other places. So, U.S., we're already doing some of that work. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Our containers, after they're done being used and shipping food around the world, they're still insulated. They can still be used for something else. So is there something else we can do? The other thing that we do, and we were kind of chatting about this before, is that after we sometimes lease our equipment, and after somebody's done using it, we kind of make sure that it's back up to the energy efficiency level that it was when it was designed and operational, and we kind of give a warranty with it, and then resell it. And so there's a lot of issues. I don't know if you talk about these, but there's a lot of issues of dumping old, crappy equipment in Africa. There's been some recent movement forward from a policy perspective to try to cut that off. But those are the kinds of things that I spend my day thinking about in the lucky job of Director of Climate Policy at Trane Technologies. So.
Thank you so much. And JJ, you've had a heads up that this question is coming for you too. But thank you so much, Helen, for also already starting to raise about food banks and the role there. And JJ, as the question is really the leading opportunities in tackling these interrelated issues.
Well, the size of the opportunity is huge, and I think we should start each one of these conversations repeating a mantra that we have been using, that is that 1/3 of the food that is produced in the world is wasted. Half of it happens at the consumer level, half of it happens at the supply chain level. And it is the emissions of this food waste is equivalent to the 3rd country in the world. We know that. Unfortunately, we've been saying this for years and years and years, and this is still here. Imagine, and we got comfortable with that in a way. Imagine an industry that produces phones or chairs or shoes or paper, and 1 out of every 3rd that is produced will be wasted. That will be unthinkable. So anyway, it seems that we have some structural and fundamental problems to solve that. And where is the opportunity? I think the opportunity is everywhere, and for the private sector, it will depend on what you do. Opportunities will be different depending on what you do. Lisa, who is there and has been an inspiration for me and for us for a few different things, said once a sentence that also is a mantra for us. She said that the food problem is not a supply problem. It is a supply chain problem. There is enough food produced in the world for everyone. It is in the wrong locations, and it is not distributed in the right way. We have food to feed 1 billion people, 1 billion extra people, and 800 million people go to bed every day without having enough food. So definitely there is a supply chain approach to all that. This comes to us now. Okay, this is the context, and now we are a supply chain company. I'm going to describe very briefly what we do, not because I want to sell anything. There is no potential customers here for us. It's just to give you the context of what we are trying to do. We are a reusable packaging company. What we do is that we offer services on pallets, crates, and containers. Those pieces of packaging, of equipment that are needed to move food across the whole supply chain. When a product is moving, when food is moving, normally we are there. We are there with a piece of packaging that accompanies that piece of food. So we have opportunity to do things in the whole supply chain. We are also experts in reverse logistics because we need to collect, this is reusable packaging, and we need to collect them back, and we know that reverse logistics is something quite unique and quite difficult to manage. And with that in mind, we propose, so we have built a strategy with several elements that, based on materiality, where we can make this real impact. Start with the words and start with the actions. And we started with the actions a few years ago. The first line of action that we have is our collaboration with food banks. We are in contact with many of our customers are food companies and distributors, and we have the privilege to work with them and to collaborate to the transportation of their goods. So by working with food banks, there is some ways in which we can facilitate that the surpluses of the food that is going to be wasted flow into the food banks. And I can go deeper into that later. I would love to talk more about our collaboration with food banks because for us it's really a privilege. We also see a huge opportunity about digitalization and track and trace. I said before that 10 years after that famous report from United Nations of the world, 1/3 of food being wasted, we still are repeating the same thing. And the reality, when you talk with the companies that operate the food systems, is that in many cases, we don't know where and when the loss is happening. We don't know where the food is. We don't know how long has it been there, location, time. We don't know what the temperature, if the chain of temperature has been broken at some point. We have partial views of some things, but we don't have a full view through track and trace of the whole supply chain. Even things that look like small or exotic, like vibrations, sometimes vibrations can contribute to food becoming waste. So this is one of the other areas that we are doing is we're saying, okay, we have difficulties obviously to track food. Why don't we do it through tracking and tracing the packaging that the food travels with, the pallet, the crate, and the container. And we have started a whole program exactly on that. So as the pallet accompanies, goes together with the food, let's see what happens with it. And I think you have a very similar story from other angles, so it's good that we are all trying to tackle the same problem. And then the third area, that this is something quite new, and we have started to discuss that, is that, well, this is not moving fast enough, I keep saying, and we know that carbon credits, the purpose of carbon credits is to accelerate action. So if we can promote more methodologies to create carbon credits, especially to food banks, that there are not many today, well, perhaps that can accelerate this, that has accelerated some areas with the pure carbon reduction. So, yeah, 3 lines of action, very much linked to who we are, because I think those are the things that every company needs to do. Materiality study, where can I have an impact? Let's go there.
Thank you so much, JJ, for the strong call to action. I'm really excited to transition over to the civil society side. We can. I think we can start. What's the question? Yes, so it's a similar question. We're looking at actions now. So not only the key opportunities, but also which actions we need in order to support tackling food loss and waste, food security, and the climate crisis. And so, Melindy, maybe we can start with you from One Acre Fund and smallholder farmers.
Yeah, so thank you. I think I like some of the discussions that were here because they link to the work that we're doing as One Acre Fund. And the video that started actually this conversation with the guy saying, I think maybe Lisa put it there because she knew I was going to be here or something, but it was saying it's hard for smallholders to access markets. And that's where we come in. Our job is really, how do we make it easy for smallholder farmers to grow food? And how do we make it easy for smallholder farmers to sell the produce that they want to sell, of course, after guaranteeing food security? And I think the actions that we have been piloting on the market access side, it's been only 3 years for One Acre Fund, but on the food production side, it's been almost 17 years. Currently in East Africa, we work with more than 1.5, almost 2 million farmers. On the market access side, it's still new. What we're doing there is a lot of capacity building. So we do a lot of extension with the inputs that we're giving to farmers. So we give farmers seed and fertilizer, but we also then train them how to grow the product, and we also train them on the post-harvest side. But we realize that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you're pushing on the farmer side. If you're not thinking about the market side, it's not going to work. So we try and make it easy for the farmer to sell, but we also try and make it easy for the off-taker to buy. Over the last year, even in 2023, probably sold about 6,000 metric tons of produce across a number of value chains, working with about 25,000 smallholder farmers. And all of this, you're talking about digitalization, all of this is tracked. We're paying farmers only using mobile money. So you can see exactly how much money the farmer is being paid. We show this also to the off-taker. It also helps in that negotiation with the off-taker. So off-taker only has to deal with one person, and then our strength is actually in farmer-facing activities. So we deal with the 25,000 farmers. Off-taker only has to deal with one person. So I think, and even in terms of the pricing, we try and make the pricing as competitive as possible, and that's where the transparency is so important. We're dealing in grains, we're dealing in fresh produce, but I think at the end of the day, it's how do you improve the market so that the off-taker is comfortable. I think what he was talking about in the video is also quality is an issue. So this is where the extension comes into play. How do you support the farmer to improve that quality? And then on the market side, the logistics are made easier because we're bringing all the produce to the off-taker, and we're doing produce both for local markets and as well as for export. So I think it's having a value chain approach, not just thinking about the farmer only in absence of the off-taker, and then also on the off-taker saying that we are going to make sure that we're supporting the farmer so that you can also know that you're sourcing responsibly. So that's what we're doing in East Africa. We're hoping it will grow to the 1 million farmers in the future, and maybe next time we come here, we'll be talking about millions of farmers served through this program. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And Megan, again, what are the actions that we need to make this possible?
Yeah, thank you. And so my name's Megan O'Hearn. I'm with Food Systems for the Future. For those of you unfamiliar with our work, we work to catalyze, enable, and scale market-based solutions that are trying to make our food system healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable. We have a nonprofit institute that works in partnerships, policy, nutrition expertise, and then we also have a for-profit impact investing arm as well called Good Food Opportunity Fund. We have operations in the US as well as globally and some work in Rwanda. So to answer your question, I think that I kind of will give you kind of 3 different answers. I think a big part of it is awareness raising, and I want to actually expand the conversation a little bit from food insecurity and food security to nutrition security. I think that there is a very strong bidirectional relationship between climate action and nutrition security, and I think that there's a lack of understanding of that relationship, particularly among investors, businesses, and even policymakers. And so I think that when we think about nutrition security, it is really critical. It's not just about having just enough access to food, but access to affordable, nutritious food. Based on estimates from the FAO, we know that 3.1 billion people around the world cannot afford a nutritious diet. And the FAO's State of Food and Agriculture report that just came out suggests that the hidden cost of the food system is $10 trillion. 70% of that is from health costs. So healthcare spending, lost productivity as a result of poor diets. That is from malnutrition in all of its forms, both diet-related chronic disease as well as stunting and wasting. And so we cannot think about the climate crisis without also thinking about nutrition security when we think about the food system. So I think that awareness raising and knowledge across all different stakeholders will be really critical. There was an initiative that came out last year from COP27, ICANN, if you've heard of that, the Initiative on Climate Action and Nutrition. So that was launched at COP27. And they came out with their baseline report recently that looked at the extent to which these interlinkages are being addressed by different key stakeholders. And they found generally that integration is very weak, whether that's NDCs, including nutrition in those kind of policy statements. Climate is not included in government procurement standards for food or in dietary guidelines. Investment theses are typically about sustainability, environmental sustainability or nutrition, not both. And private sector actions are typically on one or the other, but not both. The integration of these themes is not sufficient. And so we need greater progress in that space as well. One thing that we're doing at Food Systems for the Future is around impact measurement and management. We think that that's really critical for helping to help different decision makers think through the trade-offs that exist across both nutrition action and climate action. Some things are going to be beneficial for both, great, but some things are not. How do we think about those kinds of trade-offs in different geographic contexts? So we're developing tools that can be used by investors, by businesses, policymakers, to be able to measure the impact or kind of predict the impact for different solutions and businesses that we're looking to kind of accelerate. And then finally, on the topic of food loss and waste, I think that this is one of the greatest opportunities to really integrate action on both of these things. So some of the statistics have already been thrown around, but about 30% of food is lost globally. If we narrow that into nutritious foods and we think about fruits and vegetables, about 50% globally are lost and wasted. And then when we narrow in further, looking at, say, parts of like East Africa, we see that almost 70% of fruits and vegetables are lost and wasted. That is a tremendous loss for both nutrition and for climate. And so we see that there's the least amount of waste, typically of highly ultra-processed foods that have a long shelf life and are easy to transport and are typically safe. You know, there's the supply chains are much simpler in that sense. So we need to try to look at what are the innovations that we need from farm to fork to help with those particularly nutritious foods. And so we heard a lot about some of the innovations that are necessary already. A couple more I just want to throw in there. Thinking about agricultural side streams, valorizing agricultural side streams of different major food companies. So for example, even the beer industry, spent grain from beer industry, how can we use that spent grain, a nutritious product, to be put into ingredients of different alternative proteins? Thinking about things like silk films that you can put on fruits and vegetables to increase their shelf life. Even policies around liability protection for companies, such that they are not, there's protections when they are, donating food to different food rescue organizations. And then finally, I want to say artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think that this can really be leveraged, particularly in this space for food service companies that to better kind of predict the food needs that they have, and also to connect those companies to food rescue organizations in a more efficient and productive way.
Thank you, and thank you to all of the panelists for their amazing insights. We'll go to a quick fire session. You're not done yet. 1 minute each. I want to know briefly, in 1 minute, what is your perspective on the partnerships and collaborations that we need in order to tackle these challenges we've been talking about, food loss and waste, nutrition security, and the climate crisis? We can start with you.
So, no, this is great, and you're going to have to take the microphone away. This space, I'm a policy person and I'm a technical nerdy person. This is a space, and farms are a space that have long kind of been off to the side, right? Not our laser-like focus there. And I think that your attention to that and how do we raise awareness, I think that's right. And I think when I think about cooling for farms, how do we make it robust enough to be remote, so that if they're off-grid, there's a way forward. But I think collaboration, like an iterative process, a conversation, like, what is it that you need? Okay, what can I do? How can I help? Like, what do you need? Like, let's make sure that we get the shoes to the kids that don't have shoes, right? And that we're not giving them the coat. I think that is key. And I think also looking for, we talked about the telemetrics and looking at temperatures, looking at ways to improve what we do today to make sure that we're not wasting one drop in stuff that's already moving, but also to make sure that we are thinking about, like I said, that reverse supply chain. Where can we move stuff in a different way?
Okay, let's make sure we get it to everyone. 1 minute, please. What are the partnerships and collaborations we need?
Yeah, I think for me, the partnerships that have been very helpful for us are private sector partnerships. So yes, we're working with smallholder farmers, and it's a non-profit organization, but for the farmers that are selling, it's important that the private sector is bought into this idea of sourcing from smallholder farmers. And I think an example is even with the grain off-takers that we're working with in Rwanda for processing, because they opened that door to say that, yes, we will be okay with sourcing from smallholder farmers if you can sort out the quality piece. Now we're getting rejections of less than 2% on things like aflatoxin, just because now we're bringing in so much volume and we've already screened everything. We've already trained the farmers on how to do this. So I think if private sector has that vision that, yes, these smallholder farmers are also a very strong source of supply, then that's a very strong collaboration. And of course, we have government for regulation. We've got infrastructure that's coming in from different institutions. But I think if the buyer is already bought into this, then we can make what's on the farm work. But the two have to be speaking to each other, otherwise it doesn't work. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think I'll mention kind of two different areas of collaboration that we're thinking about at FSF. So one is we're looking at how do we bring together a coalition around both reduction of methane emissions in the food system while also ensuring dietary diversity. And this will require both bringing together major industry players, and so the role of the private sector in collaboration there is critical, but allowing for a kind of pre-competitive kind of safe space for conversation, for looking at ways to collaborate, such that you're going to have the necessary conversations. It can't just be pomp and circumstance. It can't just be kind of empty promises. How do we create the right kind of enabling environment for real collaboration to happen? The other aspect of collaboration I want to mention is around blended finance. I think that there needs to be more collaboration in terms of ways to bring greater finance for food systems transformation, and that will require bringing together different types of finance and de-risking investments that are typically not very attractive to private stakeholders. And yeah, so those are my two kind of major areas.
Okay, collaboration. Collaboration is another word that we have been using for 10 years at least, and sometimes in a meaningless way. And actually, for me, it's starting to be a taboo word, that I plan not to use it because every single event that I attended in the last years is we need to collaborate. Yes, but how? So I prefer to go for joint action, something like that. But let's start. Collaboration is not going to fall from the sky, to help us and to present in front of ourselves and make our life easier. So we need to find these partners the right partners to start acting immediately, And in our case, I want again to mention the food banking network. We wanted from industrial packaging, we wanted to go together with a partner that could help us impacting people. Being a supply chain company, this seemed to be the perfect partner. And we have articulated at different levels of collaboration that, first of all, have a material impact. I repeat, materiality, a real impact in people's life, but also has a positive and material impact in our business. And I'm not ashamed of that. We're a private company that wants to do the right thing, but at the same time, we need to make our business stronger by doing the right thing. Otherwise, sustainability is not sustainable. So for everything that we do, this is something that we keep in mind. Volunteering, great for the food banks, but great for the engagement of our people. Working with customers to bring more food into the food banks. Great for the food banks because they receive more food, but also for our commercial folks. I could go on and on with the list. I will not do that because I've seen the sign of 1 minute 3 times already. But the message that I want to leave here is that business value and as well as environmental and social value.
Let's go make it happen. And passing back to Lisa for the next segment of this event. Thank you all so much to the panelists and your wonderful insights.
Thank you so much. And let's give the panel and Lana another round of applause for that really invigorating and diverse discussion. Now, as we proceed into the next portion of the session, we are very privileged today to have with us two people who have been very, very close to the food systems discussions and also to the negotiations. So we're just going to do a fireside chat specifically on a number of things. So I'm pleased to welcome to the front Ms. Geeta Sethi. Geeta is the global lead for food systems at the World Bank. Thank you, Geeta. She just arrived today, and she's with us. Thank you so much. And then we're also so honored to have Mr. Gonzalo Munoz. He is the COP28 Chair of Food Strategy, Non-State Actor Directive Committee, and we are also very fortunate to have him on the board at GFN. And Gonzalo and Geeta, you can sit anywhere, and we're going to have a bit of a chat for a few minutes about how things stand. So thank you for being with us. So Geeta, I'm going to go to you first. We've talked a lot today about how important it is to be making progress on this issue, and we are seeing progress, which I know Gonzalo is going to talk about, but it seems we are not moving fast enough. So tell us, why is that the case? What can we be doing differently?
Thank you very much, Lisa. But when Lisa had said to me, please come to this event, standing room only, I believe her. So congratulations for that. Let me zoom out because I think the panelists and the conversations before have been have been very fantastic, and everybody's touched on a few topics. But let me zoom out and then zoom back in. Particularly given my friend here, for the high-level champion for the COP. I think this is quite a phenomenal COP. It's a phenomenal COP because to be able to get endorsement by heads of state of close to 150 countries to underscore the importance of a food system transition is not trivial. And we could hum and haw about what else could have gone in and how to do it and so on and so forth. But I think this is an incredible first step. This is a very, very strong signal because, as the panelists said, food systems is broken, and food loss and waste is one of the symptoms of a broken food system. No, so I don't need to say more about that. Thanks a lot. Second, but having said that, it is it's a Jekyll and Hyde story when one sees what's happening on the negotiations, which are not in the direction of the heads of state. No. Now, why is this important? We are talking about a food system transition at the same level as energy transition that needs financing. Unless and until negotiators do not negotiate, how is climate finance going to come into this sector? Let me give you a flavor of the climate finance numbers. On an average, they're about $660 billion a year. Food and agriculture receives about $25 billion a year, which is less than 4%. A sector that is emitting 30% of emissions, should it not get at least 30% of climate finance? We're talking about scale of financing needed. $220 billion of climate finance is scale. And hence why, whereas there's a lot to rejoice, there's a long trudge as well. Second, we talk, there's a large hue and cry, and again, I'll connect to the food loss and waste in a second, about adaptation and resilience from large number of countries, that mitigation is not their problem, adaptation and resilience is, and therefore they need financing. If in climate finance, 90% of the resources are towards mitigation, 10% are towards adaptation, should that ratio not be revisited? Again, negotiations are so important to get scale of financing in this sector. Now let me go to food loss and waste. Food loss and waste, and everybody knows the statistics and so on and so forth. There are a huge array of solutions out there. But what has been the problem? The problem is not that we don't know what the solutions are. The problem is we do not know what's happening in the value chains in a particular geography. So there's no point putting up storage if the problem is something else. If the problem is risk and a farmer's inability to manage climate risks, he or she is overplanting. As a result, we have climate outcomes which are not positive, just as a simple. So storage doesn't solve that problem. It's really to understand across the value chain. Some of my partners, colleagues had talked about private finance needed, private sector needed. Great. What we see is if in the entire value chain, let me rephrase it. When private sector is investing in technology and interventions to support reduction is when they are across the entire value chain. When they are in parts of it, it doesn't suit, it's a classic global public good problem. It's a market failure. It doesn't suit any one entity to come and behave differently, right? So it's a little bit more complicated and very much integrated into development. So let me stop there.
Geeta, thank you so much for that terrific insight. And if any of you are not aware, Geeta and her team at World Bank have actually done some absolutely groundbreaking analysis around where food loss and waste is occurring in different supply chains at the country level. And we'll make sure those resources go up on social in case you want to check it out. Gonzalo, I want to turn to you. You have been doing absolute incredible work on COPs for many years, and it has been just brilliant to be able to see a small bit of the leadership you are providing here at this COP around food systems. I want to just hear from you now. How are you feeling about the declaration has come out, this amazing call to action from non-state actors has come out around food systems. I mean, truly a heroic lift. Tell us what's next. How can we, as champions, be supporting these statements moving forward?
Well, thanks so much, Lisa. Thanks to the Food System Pavilion and the Global Food Banking Network for having us here. It is a pleasure to be joining you this panel. I mean, we are all really excited about this moment, and hopefully we will end Sunday even more excited about things that will be announced and how some more countries are signing the declaration and how that momentum is gaining more and more attraction. There's a FOMO sensation of where things are moving much faster even than what we thought not that long ago. And of course, it's built on the amazing work that many people have been doing for decades, right? It's not something that just appeared. It came to the moment when it was absolutely inevitable, absolutely evident. Unfortunately, most of that evidence comes with a lot of suffering, right? It's not only that the good news, great, that food is coming into the table, it's coming also because we're going through a major crisis. The food system is broken from wherever aspect that you want to watch it, whether it's from the moral and social aspect of it, like people dying, and then how many billions of people are under food insecurity, and how many of those are farmers that are producing our food but not being able to afford a sustainable, nutritious meal. And then at the same time, it's so absurd that we produce enough calories and we have all the technologies to do it right, and we do it wrong, right? Neither from the aspect of feeding the growing population, and neither in doing it for the planet and with the planet instead of against it. So without having to go into that detail, I am absolutely passionate about the work of the food banks in terms of solving many aspects of the social element of the food system, and now integrating fantastically the environmental aspects, starting with the methane agenda, right? And then, again, I don't need to go into the detail, but all of those elements somehow have been fantastically congregated during this year, and probably also very much because of the UN Food System Summit and the work that is being done. It's a trial and error mechanism when all of a sudden we had the possibility of using the COP28 momentum, starting with the idea of the declaration. How about bringing all countries, hopefully, or many, honestly, like initially it was like maybe 70, or wow, if we reach 100, that would be great. Last week it was 134. On Sunday will be how many more signed, but the point is that the declaration is already an extremely relevant message that, yes, we recognize how much we're failing. Second, we need to use the capacity of the climate COP as a moment in which everyone is gathering towards solution and now implementing or implementation in a much faster way. And we need to envision the global stocktake as a message of failure, and the COP30 with the NDCs as a potential matter of success if we land that those commitments properly into the national legislations. What needs to happen on the other side? The possibility of showing that there's much more that can be done, right? The declaration, let's consider as a baseline. And when it comes to what more can be done, it's a whole of society approach. It's about what we can do in the farms, what we can do in the cooling systems, logistics, of course, consumers, retail, policy, labeling, like many things that we know that needs to happen, and at the end, a culture that will protect the capacity of nature of feeding us and our own ability of doing it in a way that we don't destroy nature. So what we'll see on Sunday, hopefully, is a great expression of what's called the ambition loop. The ambition loop in the Paris Agreement is defined as a mechanism that expands the possibilities. Like, let's imagine that today is our reality, even better than what it was some days, some months, some years ago, but still not enough. And then the ambition loop expands that possibility, and while creating that gap is being filled by commitments from countries and then reaction from non-state actors and saying, yes, either we will fulfill that or we can do much more, right? The food banks is a great example of an activation of the ambition loop, where civil society is saying, even though in our countries might not exist a policy that is punishing or rewarding the wrong or right action around food waste and loss, we're going to do it. It's a moral duty. We want to collect that food and we want to try to bring it into the people in need. If that is well done and well communicated, then that's perceived by the governments and say, okay, this is happening, we have to regulate, and then all of a sudden the system starts collaborating through this stringent mechanism of the ambition loop. What are the missing parts? Of course, all of that I've said, like of course policy, of course more action, more commitment, but I agree with Gita that data. We need much more data. We have to know where our food is being wasted. We need to close the gaps in terms of communication. That food that is harvested, that can be sold, not only provides the possibility of reaching the plates of the need, it also reduces methane emissions and environmental damage, but it also improves the livelihoods of the farmers. So logic that we need to work a lot on creating and identifying where there's availability of food, how can we fill that, shorten those gaps, and do it in a way that is also providing information from the governments to strengthen the regulations.
That is a very tall agenda. Gita, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of respond to the tremendous agenda that Gonzalo has put forward, please, because I know you've done a lot of thinking and work on this.
Thank you, Lisa. I think those are some very thoughtful and profound thoughts, and I just want to expand or maybe now zoom in on the losses and waste story. So I absolutely agree that food banking, with all of my heroes, has had a huge impact. But remember, it's on the waste side, right? We still have a problem on the losses side. And the question on the, and I'm going to say something, linking it with my previous speakers had said that it's a controversial issue, so please indulge me, which is the price of food. Food's not priced right, and now there's been a lot of analytics out there, and why is it not priced right? And someone talked about the hidden cost of $10 trillion, which is much less than the market value of food. It's 20% less than the market value of food. And the hidden cost effectively means the impact we are having on climate or environment or health of people, and the deep inequities that are in the farming sector of the farmers themselves, right? And a lot of it has to do with the public policy and the public financing in many of the countries. We've talked about the fact, you've heard in the last few days that public support or subsidies, a word that countries react to, is close to $800 billion a year globally. 65% of this is distorting, but in terms of climate outcomes. 35 cents to $1 reaches the farmer, so the inequity issue, right? But the more important part is, if rice and maize is being subsidized, then it artificially depresses the price of non-staples or non-grains, which is effectively more nutritious. So as a result, where does technology flow in? It's not going to flow in to manage the more nutritious or more perishable, right? So it's a much more complex sort of story than just saying, okay, here's the intervention, hit this, or a linear model, the way the health sector has, I inoculate 100 kids are not going to have polio, it costs $1, $100, matter finished. This is much more nonlinear and really integrated, and one needs to recalibrate continuously. You made a point, and I always say, and Lisa has heard me say, that Sony doesn't make 3 TVs and throws one out. So what is so unique about the food sector that we are very comfortable throwing 1/3 out? And again, it's the pricing of food. it really doesn't matter to us. The opportunity, because we haven't, food's not priced right. Now, many will argue, look at the poverty numbers, and it's absolutely right. They're horrific, sobering, I absolutely agree. But then doesn't that mean we have a very different kind of an income support program that really begins to provide incomes to families to eat right, rather than creating these artificial distortions that, as an outcome of which, is food loss and waste? So let me stop there.
Gita.
Pardon?
I think it's not only the price. I think it's also the complexity of the supply chain, because also for non very expensive items, paper. Paper is not, or packaging. We work in the packaging industry, and a pallet is not a very expensive thing. We will never allow that one out of 3 pallets will be immediately just disregarded. Impossible. So I think there is a component of price, of course. If you're talking about diamonds, that will never happen. But there is something fundamental, structurally present in the complexity of the food supply chain.
Let me react to that, because I disagree with, because I just got an idea, like, yes. What comes to my mind, fast fashion. They produce considering that some of that will go to the garbage. So maybe it's a matter of fast, and that goes to the logistics, right? So we're producing everything so fast that needs to be reaching the market very rapidly, and it's about fast food and fast fashion. So the problem is fast. I don't know. Someone here makes a study, please, and let me know. But that's a real case. When it comes to fast fashion, and it's not a TV, but are very complex products, are not necessarily products that have a due date, that the due date is the trend. Well, let's do a panel about that. I mean, doesn't mean that this is not a good panel, but definitely we need to talk about that as well, right?
So what I love about this conversation is it's really capturing the complexities that there are in this discussion. And I just want to thank both of you and JJ and all of these speakers just for being so candid about how we are still working through these issues. Yet I feel like everyone in this room is still an optimist to a certain degree on this, because we know that we can make progress. Regrettably, we are out of time for this session.
Let me ask for one thing.
Yes, absolutely,
So
Gonzalo.
on Sunday, we will be launching the number of stakeholders assigned the call to action. I might count here, maybe have like 40 or 50 people. I hope that every one of you will sign the call to action. Go to the webpage of the High Level Champions and sign it, because it's really important to send the message. And in this case, the reference is absolutely concrete to do intensive work on reducing food waste and loss, including circular economy approaches to the system, and many other aspects around how do we produce, distribute, consume our food all around the world. Please sign it, because we need as many signatories as possible.
Gonzalo, thank you for that, and thank you for the terrific call to action. If you would like a link to it, please see Michael Oko. He'll make sure you have one. And please join me in thanking Gita and Gonzalo for a truly tremendous fireside chat. And to close out the session, we are very fortunate because, again, it is Youth Day, as well as being Food Loss and Waste Day. And we have with us to make some closing remarks Mohammed Hafiz Musa, and he is the co-founder of Farm Assist in Ghana, and he is also the Youth Agri Champion with the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens. Thank you so much for being with us. Please. Sorry, you have so many microphones to choose from.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yes, it's so good to be here, listening to the interesting conversations happening here. I'm going to start by the closing remarks that came out. The global supply chain is complex, and I think that's the beginning of sustainability interactions and actions. We are talking about youth, we are talking about children, we are talking about education and training. But then you've realized that agriculture is very narrowed, especially when you are looking at it in a country-specific basis. I grew up in Ghana where at a very younger age, when you hear agriculture, all you think about is going to the farm, which is like 10% of the whole value chain. And what this goes to tell us is that it's complex, and first of all, we need to teach it properly. in as much as we are doing the science, we are doing the innovations, if the scientists or the people who work in agriculture do not understand the complexity, the vulnerability, the risk associated with all these processes, then it means that the science wouldn't take us much further. I'm saying this because it's also Youth Day, and then globally, we have an aging farmer population. What are we doing to change that? And first of all, also boils down to education reforms, making sure that we teach agriculture, basic agriculture at a very young age, so that people get to understand agriculture and the complexity. If you know the complexities at a very young age, it gets better as you grow, and then you get to make better decisions and better investments in agriculture. Now, we are talking about youth, and then the best way to attract young people is by investment in agriculture. I'm not ashamed to admit that as young people, we follow the money, just like all of you here. And so if we have the right attraction of the private sector in agriculture innovations, then it means that we have young people taking production, processing, and all the value chain components of the global food supply chain seriously as well, so that we make sure that we are producing ethically, we are consuming ethically, and then we are ensuring and securing a future not just for ourselves, but also we are looking at the future beyond us. I want to end by saying that based on the conversation, I'm also looking very interested in Sunday, listening to the Ambition Loop and seeing what actions that we can actually take on that. And on that note, I want to say that let's talk food, let's act for food, let's invest in food, and let's work together. I'm really interested in conversations like this because you get to learn about organizations and what we do. And I'm really specifically interested in working together with the One Acre Fund because they are doing something similar to what we do in Ghana. And based on this, I'm going to end with a quote that I saw whilst I was just coming to the venue. And it says that decisions today are tomorrow's legacy. And that is what we should remember, that the decisions we make today, people will remind us for what exactly we do. On that note, thank you. Shukran.
It was a great ending. We are closing out the session. We will take a 30-minute break, and then we will be having our final session of the day with many terrific thought leaders. If you participated in this session, we would love to do a group photo. So if you could just stay for an extra minute and come to the front, that would be great. But otherwise, please join me in thanking all the speakers one final time, and we will see you in 30 minutes.